Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Many of you have been watching videos of the violence that have been taking place recently in Cameroon, Tanzania, and many other African countries following the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. I'm surprised that some people have seen the violence as a way forward. And in a country like Zimbabwe, our failure to hold street protests following Zanu PF rigged elections is seen as cowardice. I think this is a point that must be addressed, particularly concerning Zimbabwe. Here is a video of a young man encouraging Africa to stand up. In this video, so-called Our Time is Now. I'll just play the video and you can listen to it.
Hello, Africans. I bring you greetings. I am truly disappointed in Africa. This time, not only in Nigeria, but in the entire African continent. Look at what is happening in Cameroon now. The videos are everywhere online. After their own Mahmoud rigged the recently conducted presidential election in favor of a 92-year-old ancestor, a man who has been in power since 1982, that's over 43 years. What level of wickedness is this? Tell me, what joy does a 92-year-old man find in ruling over millions of young people with bright futures? How wicked can we be as Africans? And the Western world, they watch silently, enjoying this wickedness because it gives them room to keep milking Africa dry, while her citizens languish in abject poverty. What is your joy at 92? Watching children, your great-grandchildren's age mates, being shot dead on the streets of Cameroon for protesting against your wickedness? How do you sleep at night? Grounding a whole country for years for your selfish interests. Shame on the youthful police and soldiers shooting at their fellow innocent youths just to keep your grandfather's age mate in power. Have we lost all conscience? Africa, the whole world is laughing at us. We must wake up. Share.
Wake up. Yes. I think it's easier said than done. Sorry about that. It is that very issue that we must address. Wake up. For most of the African countries, since their independence, they've never held free, fair, and credible elections. And I'm fascinated by this claim that Generation Z has got a solution. I don't think they have the solution. What they're doing is repeating the same mistakes that were made by the generation before them. In the case of Zimbabwe, particularly, the biggest mistake we made soon after our independence or during even our armed struggle itself, is to hold leaders in such high regard they became gods.
I bring you.
That is at the heart of our problem. Zanu PF leaders became gods who could not be held to account for anything. We had a choice between Zanu PF and the whites. And we chose Zanu PF, and we held them on such high regard that they could do nothing wrong. Soon after independence in 1980, the worst thing that anyone could do was to be seen to be criticizing Zanu PF leaders. These are our liberation war heroes, particularly Robert Mugabe. You risked being beaten up. That has been at the root of our problem. So Robert Mugabe was able to build around him and entrench himself into power, believing that he had the divine right to rule the country. He was to remain in office for the next 37 years because we, the people, had allowed him to believe that he was a demigod. By the time we realized it was a mistake and we made a decision that we must appoint or elect an opposition whose number one task will be to implement the democratic reforms to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. Zanu PF was deeply entrenched. And to make matters worse, the opposition we elected, we were not diligent enough to say we want to make sure that these people are competent and they'll be able to carry out the task. Because there's no doubt, as much as one would not dispute the fact that Zanu PF has been a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime, one cannot also deny that there have been many opportunities to implement the democratic reforms which would have ended the Zanu PF dictatorship. They failed to implement even one reform in 25 years. That's how tragic it is. 25 years, not even one token reform implemented. If anything at all, that generation treated MDC leaders like Morgan Tsvangirai as demigods. He could not do anything wrong. And that is a carryover mentality from the previous generation that had treated Robert Mugabe as a demigod. And you would think by now people would have stopped to think and learn from the past. What did we do wrong during this struggle for independence and soon thereafter to entrench Mugabe into power? What did we wrong to entrench Morgan Tsvangirai so that he failed to implement even one token reform? Have we learned anything? If Generation A, Z in Zimbabwe is supposed to take the country forward. They should have learned something. And yet, they are the ones who were easily conned by Nelson Chamisa to participate in the flawed 2018 elections and 2023 elections on the basis of an idiotic lie that Triple C was going to win those elections. How foolish can you be? Did they ever ask him what happened when he failed to win 2023 elections? Here is Chamisa making the same outrageous claims that he was going to win 2023 elections, that he was preparing a cabinet.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
If there is anything that will infuriate many of the so-called Generation Z out there, is to say that Chamisa lied about plugging all the vote-rigging loopholes. He even evoked the name of God. Hashtag God is in it. This is God's plan. Plan ya Mwari haifo. In Zimbabwe's Generation Z is so naive and gullible that they believe this kind of idiotic nonsense. The country is going nowhere. I think the biggest mistake that we've often made here is to attribute to Generation Z wisdom when they don't have it, foresight when they don't have it. They have not learned from the past. They're just repeating the same idiotic mistakes of their parents and grandparents. Nothing has changed. The violence that we see in some of these streets post-elections is a clear sign that this generation has learned nothing. What do you expect to accomplish by conducting these violent demonstrations? In the case of Zimbabwe, you participated in a flawed elections after you've been warned repeatedly that if you participate in these flawed elections, you will give Zanu PF legitimacy. And then when you've participated and given Zanu PF legitimacy, you want to go on the street to remove the regime by street protest. Why did you participate in the first place? As much as people want to see action and something being done to end Africa's history of suffering and abject poverty and exploitation, I don't think this Generation Z is going to end that. All they're doing is repeating the same mistakes that their parents and their grandparents made before them. That is not a solution. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.